Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Miriam and I talk about all kinds of quilting and sewing related things here on YouTube. So if you didn't see, my previous video was the first video in my quilting basics series. So today is our second video. If you didn't see the first one, I will link it down in the description box below and up in a card somewhere here. If you want to watch that first and then come back to this one, you can. But I'll also be creating a playlist with all of the videos in there. So once the series is done, you'll be able to go back and rewatch whatever you would like to rewatch. I'm just very, very excited about this series because I'm going to be answering all kinds of questions that I have gotten over the past about 10 months. That's how long I've been doing YouTube so far. And yeah, we're going to answer a bunch of questions. We're going to do a deep dive into each part of making a quilt. So if you're a beginner, this is a really great series for you because you're going to get all kinds of questions answered. I'm going to give you all kinds of tips and tricks that I have learned over the years. It's just going to be a really good time. I am learning as I do these types of videos that I have kind of a different take on quilting that a lot of people do because I do not stress perfection, and there is no judgment if you don't agree with me. If you have a different opinion than I do on something, that's totally fine. Everyone's allowed to have their own opinion on something. What works for one person may not work for someone else. And that's the beauty of quilting. There are so many different ways to do each different step. So I really encourage you, even as a beginner, if you've never made a quilt before, if you're just getting started in the hobby, that challenge those strict rules. And that's what I've always tried to do. I guess I didn't grow up as a rule breaker, I always followed the rules, but when it comes to quilting, I just believe that there are no hard and fast rules, and that's the that's the hill I will die on, apparently. Anyways, so I just wanted to get that out of the way. If you do not like people challenging the rules, then this probably isn't the series for you, because we will be challenging some things and I will just be giving my honest opinion and my experience and things that I've learned, and it's gonna be a great time. So in my last video I mentioned that I am going to be, as we are going through the series, I'm actually going to be making a quilt, and the quilt that I am making is actually going to be a sample quilt for my new quilt pattern that I've designed. And I had a few people ask if I would release the pattern now, so then if they wanted to, they could be making the quilt along with me. And so this is kind of going to be kind of a deconstructed quilt along, because I'm not necessarily going to be going through the steps of making this specific quilt, but you will be able to follow along and make any quilt really through this series. I'm just going to be giving kind of general rules and things, maybe not specifically for this quilt pattern, but I heard you guys and I'm going to go ahead and release this pattern. So the pattern that I have made, I have named it Cozy Picnic, because to me, I think it kind of looks like a picnic blanket, kind of. But here is the pattern. It is so beautiful. There's only one block that you need to know how to make for this pattern. I'll pop up a digital mock-up of it so you can see it a little bit better on the screen here. But this quilt pattern, it has 5 size options in it. It's totally beginner friendly. This could be your first quilt and you could make it beautifully. And I've written it to be used with yardage, but if you wanted, you could use fat quarters or something. But I haven't written instructions for fat quarters. This is specifically written for yardage. So it's a little modern, but it's classic. I love it. I think it's beautiful, and I'm very excited to make the sample of it. So if you would like to purchase this pattern, I'm gonna have it for sale on my website. I'm actually going to do a sale from now, whenever I release this video, which I do believe is going to be Tuesday, February 27th, if I can get this video shot and edited and uploaded. If not, it will be tomorrow, the 28th, and I will do a sale for the week. It'll be on sale from February 27th to March 5th, okay? and I will have it for sale for $10 for the PDF version. Right now I just have it as a PDF. I haven't done any printouts for a printed version yet. I probably will do that. It'll just be later because I'm very busy working on these videos, so I just don't have time to put it into the site, like format it for printing, like a printed regular pattern like this. So this is my other quilt pattern, Tiny Checkers. It's very fun. It's very cute. And yeah, so I'm planning on doing this same layout type thing for cozy picnics. I just haven't done it yet for a printed version. But if you would like to purchase the PDF version, I will leave the link in the description box below. And yeah, I'm just very, very excited about this pattern. It's so cute. I designed it several months ago back in EQ8, and I was like, this is so cute, but I just haven't taken the time to write up the pattern. And then I started working on it recently, and I was like, this is such a fun pattern, and this is so great. I think this is going to be really, really good for beginners or more seasoned quilters. It's a new kind of block. It's not a traditional block. And all you use is yardage, and we sew strips together, and it's just, and then cut them. It's just going to be really, really easy and fun, a quick make. And yeah, I'm just very, very excited to kind of have this out in the world, and I'd love to see your makes if you decide to make it. Yes, that will be in the description box, and it will be, the PDF will be $10 for a week, and then after that, it'll go up to my regular $12 for a PDF, okay? So I think that is all I need to say about that. What are we talking about today? Today, we are going to talk about how to choose a quilt pattern and fabric to go along with that quilt pattern. If you hear jingling, that's my dog. She can't decide if she wants to be up on the bed or down on the floor, so I apologize if you can hear that. So choosing a quilt pattern is, I think, something that's not usually talked about, because I think a lot of pattern designers are just like, buy my patterns. That's it, you know? And it's really, when you are choosing the quilt pattern that you're making, this is a commitment, you know, because you are going to be spending, you know, hours upon hours, dozens of hours at least, making this quilt. So you want to make sure that you're choosing something that you are going to be comfortable with, and that is within your skill level, and something that you're actually really going to enjoy making. So when I go to choose a quilt pattern, a lot of times I like to look up other people's versions of it. I like to look on Instagram or on Pinterest and kind of see what other people have done, just to get a little inspiration, you know, and see what it looks like in different color palettes and the different sizes and things like that. So the first tip that I would give, the most important thing probably for choosing a quilt pattern, is you need to check the skill level. I know it can be tempting to choose, you know, this gorgeous, intricate quilt pattern, but if you're a beginner quilter, that's going to be, it is not going to be impossible for you to do it. It's not. You could do it, especially if you can figure out the techniques and things, but it can be overwhelming, and it can be discouraging to try to take on something that's just plain out of your skill level. But if you specifically are looking for a challenge, like you want something that is going to challenge you, you know it's going to take a long time, you want to challenge yourself in trying something extremely new and a little bit more difficult, then you go right ahead. The kind of confusing thing is there's not really a kind of community standard for what a beginner level quilt pattern is, or a confident beginner. I see a lot of that, confident beginner or intermediate or advanced. You know, there's not a standard of what that means. You kind of have to take the skill level that is put on a pattern with a grain of salt, because what one pattern designer might think is a beginner pattern might actually be a little bit more complicated, might be in that confident beginner category. Or I've seen several patterns that someone has called a confident beginner pattern, but really should be labeled intermediate, just because of all the little tiny pieces and There's different angles in the blocks and things like that. So I think a lot of designers kind of like to put confident beginner because they think that that's a broader audience, that more people will get it. A lot of people might be turned off by the phrase intermediate skill level, you know? So not calling out any designers, that's totally fine if you want to put confident beginner, but I think that's probably kind of the thinking of why a lot of pattern designers put that. I personally enjoy designing beginner patterns. It's very fun for me because I like to have a beginner quilter in mind while designing and trying to figure out, you know, shortcuts and, you know, something that's going to be really beautiful but isn't complicated to make. And that's something that I really like to design, and my patterns have all been beginner. My free cottage twirl pattern is beginner. My tiny checkers quilt pattern is beginner. That's that one, tiny checkers. It's literally just jelly roll strips sewn together and then cut to make really fun kind of checkered blocks. And then this one is definitely a beginner, and it looks a little complicated, doesn't it? It looks kind of like, ooh, there's a lot going on there, but it's just one block. Pointers on actually choosing a pattern. I would look to see how many different blocks are in the design. If you're a beginner, I would shoot for finding a pattern that has 1 to 4 different blocks. You don't want to get overwhelmed with the creation of all kinds of different kind of blocks unless you are up for that challenge. Like I said, I don't want this to be nothing that I'm saying in this video is like a hard and fast rule. It's not something that I want you to be like, I do not want you to get a pattern that has over 4 blocks if you're a beginner, because you're not going to be able to do it. That's just not true. Because when I was a beginner, I tried things that were more complicated than really what I should have tried, but luckily I stuck with it and it was super fun and I enjoyed the challenge. So if you're like me, you might want to try something a little bit more challenging. A good example of something that's a bit more challenging but still pretty beginner friendly are Elizabeth Hartman quilt patterns. I love Elizabeth Hartman patterns. I have made several of her quilts. I have a couple here. Her kittens, super cute. That one was actually quite simple to make. I have the dogs and sweaters. I also have a penguins one, but I must not have pulled that one out. But yeah, these are really great because they're a fun, modern design and they are beginner friendly, but know that there's lots of tiny pieces and it can get a little overwhelming, but her patterns are really well written. She has illustrations for like every step of making the block. So they're really fun to follow along with. I really love her patterns. Anyways, so yeah, if you are a super beginner, just pick a pattern that's 4 blocks or less just to take out the confusion and the overwhelm of trying to learn several different techniques in one quilt. Something else that I would recommend is finding a pattern that has several different sizes. This is helpful for several reasons. It is helpful because you can use that pattern for all kinds of things then if you get one that has several sizes included. So let's say you want to make a throw size quilt and you find a pattern that is only written for a throw size. And let's say you really loved that pattern and you want to make something larger. Now, more experienced quilters can take that pattern and kind of add on blocks and sashing and rows and whatever else that they would want to make whatever size they would want. But a lot of people don't want to do the math. They don't want to figure out the fabric requirements. They want that to be already done for them. And that's why it is really awesome to find a quilt pattern that has other size options written. So if you wanted to use that same pattern and make, let's say, a queen or king size quilt for your bed, you could do that. Or maybe someone in your family is going to be having a baby and you think, wow, that quilt pattern that I had would make such a cute baby size quilt. If you have a pattern that already has that written, then you can, easily create that quilt with the instructions in that pattern. So that's why I really enjoy finding quilts that have several sizes written. That's why I like to include several sizes in my quilt patterns. Yeah, I think that is an important thing to look out for. Something else to look for, I think most quilt patterns now include this, but it is very nice when they include the fabric requirements. It saves a lot of time. You don't have to do any quilt math to figure out the fabric requirements for yourself, and that's very helpful. Along those same lines is if you want to use pre-cuts only, say you just want to use jelly roll strips, then look for a jelly roll friendly quilt pattern. You can search that online, on Google, on Etsy. Etsy is a great place to find quilt patterns. Pinterest, things like that. You could type in jelly roll friendly quilt pattern, fat quarter friendly quilt pattern, charm pack friendly quilt pattern, that sort of thing. And that's gonna help you narrow down to those pre-cuts if you'd prefer to use pre-cuts. So if you like a more scrappy look, you know, pre-cuts are a good way to do that because they have a bunch of prints all put together that, you know, go together because they're all from the same fabric collection. Yeah, and a lot of times that can help cut down on time with cutting the fabric and things depending on the pattern. That's something to look for in the fabric requirements. See if they have, you know, you'll need 12 fat quarters or 5 yards in varying prints and something like that. That's something to look for, and that can be very helpful as well. Also, another thing to keep in mind, some patterns are written to be used with a specific template or like acrylic template or some kind of tool. So just keep an eye out for that. If you buy a pattern, just read the description and see if the seller is also saying, you know, oh, you need this template to be able to use this pattern. That's something to look out for. I have seen that a little bit in my travels online, and it's not super common, but it does happen where a designer will design a quilt specifically for a new quilting tool or a template or something. So keep that in mind. A little jumbled here, but something to keep in mind also, or to think about when you are choosing a quilt pattern, is kind of the style that you want to go for. So do you prefer a more traditional looking quilt pattern, or do you really like something modern and fun and playful? That's something to keep in mind when you are choosing your quilt pattern. There are thousands upon thousands of quilt patterns available, and it can get overwhelming when you're trying to pick something because it's like, what do I go with? What do I do? So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Just to sum up what we've gone over so far, we want to, when we're looking for a quilt pattern, we want to look at the skill level and choose accordingly. We want to check fabric requirements. We want to see, do they offer other size options in the pattern? Do I need an extra tool or template for this pattern? Also, what style of quilt pattern are we looking for? Those are probably my top tips for picking a quilt pattern. It's really going to be up to you and what, like I said, what kind of challenge you want to put yourself in. Also, you decide if you want to pay for a pattern or if you want a free pattern. There's all kinds of free quilt patterns out there. Like I said, I have one called Cottage Twirl. That's linked in the description of all of my videos. I love that pattern. It is super popular. It is beautiful. It's a more of a traditional. 2 blocks are included, and it is a beautiful quilt. It's written to be used with yardage. So don't feel like you have to pay for quilt patterns if you don't have the money to, or if you just, you know, you don't want to have just another expense in your quilt making. There are lots of free quilt patterns available. Next, I really want to dive into how to pick fabric. So choosing fabric, I think, is super overwhelming for a lot of people, and it really shouldn't be. I think it's one of the most fun parts of making quilts. You get to choose what color palette you want to go with, what kind of prints you want to use. Do you want to use prints, or do you just want to use solid fabrics? I love picking fabric. It's so much fun to do, whether you're doing it online or if you're doing it in person, in store. I'll give you some of my kind of how I go about picking fabric. It really depends really on the pattern that you choose. So if I find a pattern that I fall in love with, or if I design a pattern that I'm in love with, and it's specifically written for a pre-cut, then I look for pre-cuts, you know, because it does save time with cutting. And don't worry, we're going to be doing an entire video on how to cut fabric, so stay tuned for that. By the way, if you are not subscribed, please subscribe and click the little notification bell so you will know when the rest of these videos in the series are coming out. So I would really appreciate if you subscribed and join me on this journey. This is so much fun, and I've got so many cool things planned for basically the rest of the year. We've got lots of fun projects planned. I would love for you to join me. So yeah, just hit the little subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, because that will let you know when the videos are uploaded, so you don't have to go searching for it. You'll get a little notification. Back to it. So choosing fabrics. If you want to use pre-cuts, pre-cuts are a great way to go. The pre-cuts that are available are going to be, well, the most common ones are, well, let's start with the smallest. We've got honey buns, which is like a jelly roll pack, but they are 1.5 inch wide strips. I think I have a couple. Yep. So this is a honey bun. So it's 1.5 inch strips, and they're itsy bitsy, but look at all those gorgeous fabrics that are included in one bundle. So you could make a really cool scrappy style quilt with this type of pre-cut. So next after that, I would name the jelly roll. Same thing, jelly roll. Look at all of these fabrics. This is actually a fabric designed by Maureen McCormick called Flower Power, which I think is just so cool. If you don't know who Maureen McCormick is, she played Marsha on the Brady Bunch. And she actually designed some fabric, and I was so excited when I saw this because it's so beautiful. I love the kind of vintage look. See, there she is. She's beautiful. But anyways, so that is a jelly roll, and that is 2.5 inch strips cut from yardage. So that's kind of the only strips I think that are cut that I know of. If there's something else, you can let me know. But then we have mini charm packs. I don't have any of those, but mini charm packs are little 2.5 inch squares cut, and they're in a little pack, and all of these pre-cuts are going to have multiple prints in them, unless you buy a solid color pre-cut, which is also an option. That's something that they sell. But so a mini charm pack is going to be 2.5 inch squares. A regular charm pack is 5 inch squares. Then we have layer cakes, which is a 10 inch square pack. And those are really fun. You can cut those in multiple different ways and use them for all kinds of things. So usually, for example, if I see that Missouri Star Quilt Company is having a really good sale on pre-cuts, which, by the way, I'm a Missouri Star Quilt Company partner, and I have a 15% off discount in the description box below if you would like to use it. So you just use the link, and it applies automatically to your cart when you check out, which is really cool. And I really appreciate it if you use the link, because I get a little commission on each sale, but it's no extra charge to you, and you get that 15% off. So back to what we're talking about. Let's say they're having a really good sale on pre-cuts. The pre-cuts that I specifically look at are layer cakes and fat quarter bundles. Those are the two pre-cuts that I find the most value in, because they have the most flexibility, if that makes sense. So from a layer cake, you could make mini charm pack squares or charm pack squares, right? You just cut them in half or in quarters and make those charm packs. That's why I like layer cakes. And then fat quarters, I mean, you can cut all kinds of pieces from a fat quarter, which is really cool. Fat quarter bundles are the last pre-cut that I'll mention. And well, actually, okay, so first there's fat eighths. So a fat quarter is 21 by 18, and then a fat eighth is 21 by 9. So it is a half width of a fat quarter. So those are available. Fat eighths are not as popular or as common as a fat quarter bundle, so that's something to keep in mind. But you know, you could always cut a fat quarter bundle into fat eighths. You know, you could easily do that if you wanted to divide it up. And then the last pre-cut that you'll see are half yard bundles. So, and those are also not as popular as a fat quarter bundle, but that's just going to be half yard. So that's 42 inches wide by 18 inches tall, right? So yeah, so those are the pre-cuts that are available. And yeah, so pre-cuts that I would go for are layer cakes, fat quarter bundles, or half yard bundles if I see one that I like. That's something to keep in mind. Also, I wanted to mention, I talked about this quite a bit in the last video. I do not pay full price for fabric, ever. I am very frugal. I'm so happy to hear that so many others of you are frugal as well, and you feel my pain with not wanting to pay full price for fabric. But it's kind of like, I want to use the really nice designer fabrics, but I don't want to pay full price. And really, there isn't any reason to pay full price unless you need a fabric like right now, because so many shops and online stores and in person have sales on fabric. That's why I specifically love Missouri Star Quilt Company or Fat Quarter Shop, because they both do very good sales. And I never pay full price for fabrics. I just wanted to mention that I don't want you to feel like you can't use the nice fabrics, because they do go on sale. You just gotta be watching the sales and just watch and wait, right? So that's what I do. Now I have a pretty good sized stash that now I need to start cutting into, right? Instead of buying more fabric, I need to actually use what I have. So yeah, I wanted to mention that, and I definitely went into more detail about that in the previous video. All right, so the most common way that at least I buy fabric is by the yard. Now, what that means is, you know, when you go to a fabric store, they have fabric on a bolt. So let me pull one out here real quick. I have actually bought an entire bolt because it was on such a good sale at Missouri Star. So I went ahead and bought the bolt because I loved the fabric. And it's still in its shrink wrap. But this is a bolt of fabric, right? We've all seen bolts of fabric. It's got information here, and that's a bolt. So most fabric stores, you can buy fabric at least by the half yard and then by the yard. I know when you buy online, a lot of online stores don't like to do smaller increments than a yard. That's something to keep in mind when you shop online. Just know that some stores just are, especially if they're like a small business, they don't like to do smaller cuts. Some will do half yard. A few will do a third of a yard. That's kind of the smallest they'll go. But that's something to keep in mind. But you know, if you go to Joann's, you can get like, you could literally get like a 3-inch cut if you wanted to. So it just depends on where you shop. Yeah, I like to buy by the yard because a lot of times that's what goes on sale. And I like to use yardage for making quilts. Specifically, this pattern is written to be used with yardage, right? So that's what I will be using for this quilt. And I'm actually trying, for the first time, I'm going to be trying Bella Solids by Moda. I have never tried Bella Solids. I have always used Kona. I am a huge Kona fan. I love their solid. I love their color selection. But I found with this pattern, with the colors that I wanted to use, I couldn't find the right shades for the pattern, really what I really wanted. So I ventured out of my comfort zone a little bit and I ordered some Bella Solids from Missouri Star, so I'll be trying that. So I'm kind of looking forward to trying that and seeing how I like it. Anyways, that's a little bit off topic. So now that we kind of know kind of how you can buy fabric, the different cuts and things that you can get, now I want to talk about how to pick fabrics. Again, I know I keep on saying it, but it's going to depend on the pattern that you use. What I mean by that is if you are going to be making something that has a lot of smaller pieces, say 2.5-inch squares or rectangles and smaller, you're probably not going to want to use a fabric that has a large print, because it's going to be, you're going to be cutting the pieces so small you're not actually going to be able to see that print. But on the other hand, if you're making a pattern that has larger pieces, say 5 inches or larger, 4 or 5 inches or larger pieces, then those larger print fabrics might be a good choice. So that's something to keep in mind. It's again, I feel like I don't hear anybody talking about this kind of stuff. That's important to know. I know I have learned that from trial and error, where it's like I bought this beautiful fabric with this gorgeous print, but then realized as I'm cutting it, it's like you're not even seeing like a full flower or like a full bird. I really like fabric with birds on it. So you're not even seeing the full picture, you know? And even if you try to fussy cut it, fussy cutting means when you're cutting a specific part of a fabric to get that image in your quilt block. And it's like, what's the point of using that gorgeous big print if you're not even going to be able to really see it, right? There's some terms that are thrown around. So there's print, there's low volume prints, which is basically going to be, let me open up my cabinet here so I can show you. So a low volume print is something like this. So it is kind of a two-tone type thing. It kind of goes together and it's not super vibrant. It's not like pop, pow, pow. You know, it's more of a low volume is kind of what they call it. So this is really good for blending. And let's see, what else do we have in here that I can kind of give an example. Okay, so this is more of a vibrant print, right? It's more interesting. There's a lot more colors involved, and it's a larger print than what this print was, right? So what I would do, this is my recommendation, especially for beginners when you're picking out fabric. And this is what I have done many times for quilts, is I will pick a vibrant fabric, kind of like this. And I actually really love this. This is so pretty. So I would pick something like this with, it's vibrant, it's a fun print, I really like it. It's small enough for smaller pieces, and it has a bunch of colors. That's something that's really important to me. That's what I really like to do. If you don't like a lot of color, then you do you, boo. You get whatever you want to use. This is an area, when choosing fabric, there are no rules. And I don't want you to feel like there are. I want you to have fun when you go pick fabric. It's supposed to be fun. I don't want you to go to the fabric store and feel stressed and like overwhelmed about picking fabric. It's supposed to be fun. You are getting a chance to express your creativity. You're getting a chance to use a new color palette that you've never used, maybe, or try a new kind of print that you've never done. I really want to stress that this is supposed to be a fun process. So if it's feeling stressful, walk away, you know? Just walk away. Come back when it's not stressful. What I would do is I would pick a print like this. We got lots of colors going on. Very cute, very fun, kind of bohemian a little bit. So I would pick this, and then I would find fabrics that match the colors in this print. And I would use fabrics that have prints because I like mixing prints, but I would find low volume options. This guy that we pulled first is a perfect combo with this. It's low volume, the colors go really well. It's also a little bohemian kind of, and I just think they go really, really well together. Let's pick a few more fabrics so I can kind of show you what might not go well. Let me pull out some stuff here. Okay, well, this is an excellent example of what might work for you, does not work for me. Someone might like this combo, right? The colors go. It's green and kind of a cream and kind of a orangey peach. They kind of go, but for me, I don't think I would put these two together. I just don't really like the prints together, because this is more playful and very colorful, and this seems more kind of cottagey sweet. So I wouldn't necessarily put these together, but someone else might. And you know what? That's okay, because it's your quilt. You do what you want to do, right? So that's a really good example of something that might work for someone, but it doesn't work for me. So let's see here. Here's another really good low volume option. So this is just like little checkers. I really like little checkers. It goes really well with that. The color is like spot on and it looks lovely. So that's another one. Let's pick something else here. Here's another fun low volume option. If you ever see fabrics with kind of handwriting on them and stuff, I just think these look so sweet. And I like that with this. It's not too busy. I really love the orange. The orange goes well with this orange of the flower. And you know, some people might not like these two together. They might not, and that's okay. But I think that looks really good together. And I'm just going off the fly here. I didn't have this stuff picked out. This is kind of fun. And this is fun to do just with your stash. You know, shop your stash. Pick something out. Pick out that one pop fabric that you really like, and then go through and see if you have some low volume fabrics or solids that go with it. And this is a really good exercise to kind of get yourself used to kind of mixing patterns and mixing colors and seeing what works and seeing what your eye likes. So let's see, I'm gonna do one more fabric here. Another cute low volume, little bohemian dotted fabric. And again, there's it with that one. Now let's look at them all together. And look how pretty that looks. If you had been at the store, you would you put those together? Just automatically think like, oh yeah, you just see them without comparing them and think, oh yeah, those go together. Probably not, because they are very different. But look how beautiful they look together. I actually really like this combination, and I'm going to set this off to the side for something because I love that. So that's a really good exercise to do. I have gone onto Pinterest and found a color palette that I'm really not a big fan of, like a super vibrant like rainbow palette. I love the rainbow, okay, but I don't sew with those colors. You know, I like more earth tones and warm colors like these, right? But it's really fun to kind of go into your stash and specifically look for a different color palette that's out of your comfort zone. And that just kind of gets your eye trained to put things together that you wouldn't necessarily think to put together. And that's just really fun to do. You could go to Joann's and do that. It doesn't have to be your stash if you don't have a lot of fabric, or you can go to whatever store and do that. And that's really fun to do. I really enjoy doing that. You can also do that online. Just add stuff to your cart and then don't accidentally buy it if you don't want to buy it. That's a really good exercise. So if you're struggling with picking fabrics, or if picking fabric seems very overwhelming to you, that's a really good exercise to do, is to just try. You can go on Google or on Pinterest and you can just look up color palettes. You can pick like specific color palettes, like you can put in bohemian color palettes, or you know, rainbow color palettes, or you know, earth tone color palettes and things like that, and those will pop up, and then you can use those kind of as a guide of what to look for, you know. But I strongly advise, if you want to use prints, to pick at least one, maybe two fabrics that are from the same collection that you really like, and use those as kind of your foundation, and then build upon that with those lower volume fabrics that go with that, right? And you can pick fabrics that have only one color, or kind of one color and then a different tone of that color in a low volume, or you can pick fabrics that have two completely different colors but still go with that foundation piece. That is a really great way to pick fabrics. Just remember, if you kind of have in your mind that you want to use a large print, then when you are picking out a quilt pattern, make sure that you are picking out something that has allowance for you to be able to have that large print shine, right? So a really good way to do that is to pick a quilt pattern that has kind of like a centerpiece of star blocks, like an 8-point star block with a large centerpiece. That is a great way to show off those large prints. A really great fabric designer that does really cool large prints is Tula Pink. Again, her color palette is totally out of my comfort zone, but I love her prints. They are so cute. And her prints and her fabrics work really well in those quilt patterns that have larger pieces, larger blocks. So you could make just a large patchwork quilt that's just squares, but larger squares to show off those prints, and that would look amazing. I hope all that made sense. I hope that answered some of your questions. If you have more questions about choosing fabrics, go ahead and ask them in the comments below, and I will try to address those in the next video, if you ask them in the next couple of days. So yeah, I really hope that helps. And really, picking fabric and picking a pattern, these are supposed to be fun, enjoyable moments. So if it's not feeling fun, then maybe you should just wait until you're in the headspace where it will be fun. Because I promise you, when you have fun picking the fabric, and you have picked fabric that you were in love with and a pattern that you were in love with, the entire quilt making process is so much more fun and so much more enjoyable if you know you're having fun at the beginning. Right? Thank you so much for watching. If you have questions, let me know. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified for the rest of this series. I'm very excited to go through this with you guys, and I just hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you soon, all right? Bye.